to this week's Cruise Chat. I'm Kathleen Penner, owner of Plenty of Sunshine Travel, and today I'm joined by Kristin. And today we're going to be talking about sustainability on the seas, and I'm really excited about that topic. Now, I've had a chance to meet with Kristin before, so make sure you go back and you look at the playlist because we have some really exciting things that we've discussed in the past. But make sure you do still come back here because this is going to be really a fun topic to talk about. So over to you.
Thank you so much, Kathleen. It's such a pleasure to sit here with you again and go through something that we at Hurtigruten Group are very passionate about and really pride ourselves on being industry leaders. And that is the concept of sustainable travel. And I think definitely more and more people are keen on this idea of, how can I pursue a type of travel that is aware of, being a bit more eco-friendly, especially for us. We have the opportunity to be able to travel to some of the most environmentally sensitive regions of the world. And we want to make sure that we are leaving no footprint behind, when we are there. So we've done a lot within Hurtigruten Group, both on our expedition side and our Norwegian Coastal Express side, to ensure that we are really maximizing how we can be the most sustainable as a company. And we have some pretty fantastic goals that we are working towards so that we can ultimately in future end up operating 100% emission free.
Amazing. That is a really good goal. Wow.
Very good goal. It will take time, and investment, but it is something that we are very passionate about and want to make sure that we are pursuing as a company. So I hope today I'm just, going to share with you some ways that we are currently working on our sustainable footprint and how our guests can even get involved in enjoying a sustainable version of travel.
Wonderful.
So first and foremost, kind of our guiding principles. We do follow the UN Sustainable Development Goals. There's, I believe it's about 17 goals in total, that we kind of use as our footprint for how we structure ourselves as a company and how we can go through different initiatives to work on the footprint that we are leaving. So it really is something that gets worked into the core of how we operate, not just on board our ships, but, in our offices and, our land employees as well. And it's funny coming from a sales perspective, even right down to our brochure supplier, for example. I mean, Kathleen, I'm sure you could attest to how many brochures do you tend to get that are usually wrapped in plastic, and put in a box and then sent over to you. So we had approached our brochure supplier to say, could you just remove that layer of plastic that is around the brochures and just put the books in a box and let's ship it out that way. And that's where, we want to be working with suppliers as well that are keen on taking the sustainable approach. And so once they had that conversation with us, little did they realize too, it was also cost saving for them, to be able to eliminate that one layer. And of course, for us, it really helps us to keep the sustainable mindset throughout the entire operation. So something so simple, yet, can make a large impact at the end.
That's what I was going to say. Something so incredibly small that, you're wrapping up 5 books together or something,
Exactly.
You're like, what difference is that going to make? But it's over the grand scheme of how many books you send out and how many things, huge impact.
You've got it. And you'll find a lot of kind of the things we talk about through this are exactly that. It may seem small in doing it the one time, but in its repetitive nature and doing it, on every ship and across every destination, the impact can be very big. And I think too, as guests on board, we hope that they will, see and recognize that and maybe want to make some of their own changes in their own day-to-day lives as well. Because I know when I did my first expedition with Hurtigruten, I had the opportunity to do an Iceland to Svalbard expedition. And for those who aren't familiar, Svalbard is very high up in the north. We consider it the high Arctic. And we had the ability to cross over 80 degrees north when we were on this expedition. So you are ways away from any type of, cities or towns or inhabitants or anything like that. It's just you and Mother Nature. But what the very surprising thing is we could go ashore to do some landings, and the amount of waste you can actually see up there. And this is a perfect example of that. This
Yeah.
photo taken up in the high Arctic, again, where there's no human population around, but the impact of humans is there. So this is some of our guests doing some of our beach clean initiatives, and we get a lot of the fishing industry waste that comes up there as well. You can see all the netting. We get a lot of plastic bottles and things that float up here. So it was very eye-opening for me to see this in such a very dramatic way. And we even came home from that experience ourselves, my husband and I, and started thinking of more ways that we could be more environmentally friendly in our own day-to-day lives, because we had stopped the use of, the individual plastic water bottles and things like that. But we've even gone to the extent of kind of working with sustainable clothing companies, for where we buy our clothes. And of course, with the laundry tabs now that you can get through that True Earth company, which I believe is a Canadian company, like just all those things, again, if we all individually did it, imagine what a big impact it can have. So we really do have this hope that, our guests will travel on board and have this impact themselves and want to come home, as agents of change and ambassadors for our world.
Oh, I love that. That's a great way to phrase it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love that you leave the beaches better than when you came.
That's
And,
exactly
how many times can you say that? You're taking away your footprint, and you're taking away some things that just shouldn't be there. So
and it's funny, we talk about, leaving a reduced footprint, and from a very literal sense, I've actually seen when we're, in the Arctic or down in Antarctica where there is snow, I've actually seen our expedition team kind of make our footprints disappear as well, and kind of brush them over so that it really looks like we've had no impact on where we've been, taking it to that literal no footprint behind. So so there's a lot that we hope with our guests, that they'll have sort of that change the world mentality after an expedition or a trip along the Norwegian coast with us. Where a lot of this comes from, it does actually date back to some of our polar heroes, and some that have had great impact on what inspires us as a company. So very famed Norwegian explorer, Roald Amundsen, he is actually the first to have found the full transit all the way through the Northwest Passage after several failed attempts in the past, as we're probably very familiar with, many are familiar with the Franklin expedition. He was also the first to make it down to the South Pole, and documented to have been the first to have made it to the North Pole with his airship as well. So he heavily influences, a lot of the stories we tell on board, and really diving into some of that history. But if you can believe it, back in 1882, at the age of 10, Roald Amundsen had this to say: "In my imagination, I created an electric ship that could break through all kinds of ice, that nice and elegantly, fearful and irresistible, could sail through Arctic oceans." So imagine the vision of an electric ship at 10 years old in 1882. So we really,
the future,
right? I mean, I think, what was I doing at 10 years old? Probably playing with worms in ponds, like just not.
Just about to say, digging for treasure in the backyard.
This was not my worldly vision. But thankfully, he had this worldly vision. And in 2019, we had a great sort of nod to Roald Amundsen, where we were able to create the world's first hybrid electric powered ship. And of course, rightfully so, and very aptly named, the MS Roald Amundsen.
Oh, wonderful.
And this is the type of thing where, definitely in the cruise industry, this is where it can start in a big way, in terms of embracing alternate ways to fuel your ship. A lot of, especially the shipping, the container ships as well, heavy fuel oils is still very much a common way to fuel ships, because it is the least expensive form of fuel. But unfortunately, it has the most detrimental impact on the environment. So we have made a dedication, to ourselves as a company to make sure that we were one of the first to ban the use of heavy fuel oils. We did that back in 2018. And so if you can believe it, in 2019, Hurtigruten made Roald Amundsen's dream come true, and we launched the world's first hybrid electric powered ships. And of course, we had to very aptly name it the MS Roald Amundsen.
And rightly so. Incredible.
Well, exactly. I mean, I feel like he has earned so much more than just a ship. But this is, really where it can start in the cruise industry is finding those alternate fuel types to use, because unfortunately, some of the industry, and especially the container shipping industry, still use those heavy fuel oils because it is, the least expensive way to fuel your ships. But unfortunately with that, they are the most detrimental to the environment. Thankfully, heavy fuel oils were banned down in Antarctica. And we as a company did our own personal ban on heavy fuel oils over a decade ago. But heavy fuel oils still aren't banned up in the Arctic regions. And so we are working with different organizations, also like the Arctic Association of Expedition Cruise Operators. We work heavily with them and with other operators in the region to try and make this push and fight to get those heavy fuel oils banned, especially in not having the ability to use them in such sensitive regions of the world as well. Because if there was ever an oil spill, I mean, oh my gosh, they can have huge negative impacts on the coastal communities. Of course, they're not great for the sea ice, which the polar bears heavily rely on, for their migration and their feeding, because interaction with these heavy fuel oils can actually cause the ice to melt at a 75% faster rate than it already naturally is on its own. And we know climate change is not helping the sea ice situation either. So for us as a company, we've gone through different ways of, seeking out these alternate ways to fuel our ship. And we are definitely starting to see some positive change within the cruise industry as well, which is fantastic. So we are so pleased. Our second of the world's first hybrid electric powered ships, MS FRIDTJOF NANSEN, in 2021, out of 400 cruise ships that were rated in the world, she was actually named the greenest, most environmentally friendly ship. So this, like, oh my gosh, exactly. This is something that we are so proud of. And again, it's just, we want to be out there as leaders, and we'll continue pushing that forefront for the betterment of ourselves, the betterment of the industry, because there's a lot behind protecting the beautiful world that we all, explore. So
absolutely.
Just some of the other ways that we have explored in terms of powering our ships. Believe it or not, we have actually approached the fishing and the forestry industries, because they have a lot of waste that they acquire from their day to day. So we have actually found a way to make that a type of biogas. So imagine the fish heads that are coming out of, the fishing industry. We can actually use what nature has produced as a form of biofuel on our ships. So essentially powering our ships with nature.
Wow, incredible.
And then another great thing, and this really more comes down to sort of individual country initiatives. And I hope that we'll see more and more of that throughout the world. So Norway as a country is a very forward thinking country when it comes to sustainability and looking for alternate methods of power. So what's great is, with our Norwegian Coastal Express fleet, we have 7 ships that spend every day of the year on the Norwegian coast. Plus we have 2 expedition ships that sail a lot of the coast of Norway as well. And Norway has actually developed in each of their, towns and cities that do accept ships, to have the ability to literally plug in your ship when you're in port. So what that actually does then is we are completely emission free when
Mhm.
we are plugged in to each of the ports. So we have adapted the entire coastal fleet, as well as our 2 ships that are along the coast of Norway for expedition,
Mhm.
to have this shore power, so that when we are docked in these small coastal communities or the larger cities, we are not emitting any of our CO2 or nitrogen oxide gases into the communities.
Isn't
So
it
this is
fun?
actually kind of a great partnership between
Mhm.
us as the cruise line and the country of Norway, and we are starting to see this idea of setting up the capabilities at different ports
Mhm.
to offer shore power at different countries now throughout the world. So we're looking forward to, a much bigger push for this to happen, and for
Mhm.
cruise lines to be able to adapt their ships so that, we are not emitting things into the coastal communities and places that we're visiting at
Mhm.
the end of
Mhm.
the day.
Wow.
And then you heard me kind of mention zero emissions,
Mhm.
and we actually made an announcement just a couple months ago that by 2030, our Coastal Express product, we will have the first zero emissions ship on the water.
Goodness. So
We
that's not like
have
low emissions. That's zero.
This is
That's
zero.
incredible.
If there is one thing I love about working for Hurtigruten is, we don't just talk our talk, we walk
Mhm.
our walk as well. And this is something where we wouldn't have announced it if we didn't already have the plan in place and the
Mhm.
investment with another company in Norway to move forward in achieving this.
Mhm.
So we're very thrilled that this is kind of our plan going forward,
Yeah.
and we have a goal by 2040 to be 100% carbon neutral,
Mhm.
and by 2050 as a company to be 100% zero emissions.
Oh my goodness.
So
Wow.
we have a lot of big goals ahead of
Mhm.
us, but I am so proud, to work for a company like Hurtigruten Group, where I have no doubt that we will definitely achieve these
It will
things.
be.
If
Yeah.
not, maybe, blow our targets out of the water too. We'll
That's
see.
it.
I don't want to put
Mhm.
any pressure on the company, but I think in
No
all
pressure. Just do it.
seriousness,
Right. Yep.
right? In all seriousness, though, I mean,
Yeah.
it's great to really work with, and
Mhm.
be able to kind of support
Yeah.
everything that this company is doing. They've got
Absolutely. It's
such a
nice to have,
forward-thinking
a
way.
company that aligns with your personal goals and your personal missions. And that's a
Exactly.
perfect fit for you. Mhm.
I couldn't agree more. It really is kind of a day-to-day pride that we all share within the company. So another, great milestone that we were able to achieve back in 2018, we were the world's first major travel company and cruise line
Mhm.
to ban those single-use plastics.
Mhm.
And again, that's one thing where we are starting to see that spread
Mhm.
throughout operations with many other cruise lines and hotels and things like that. And I must admit, it's something I pay attention to,
Yeah.
with each new hotel that I stay on, or each new
Mhm.
cruise line that I experience. And this is one where I think the industry is doing very well in working out and figuring out the plans on
Yes.
how they can make this, a thing of their kind of not too distant future as
Mhm.
well.
Mhm.
And we very much want to support a sustainable food aspect to our operations as well.
Mhm.
So a lot of that comes down to, first of all, starting by sourcing our food locally as much as possible. Because of course, what this can do is it eliminates the amount of miles that food needs to travel to get
Mhm.
from some international place to our ships. If we're sourcing them locally, they've got a very limited, length of time that they need to travel to get from point
Right.
A to point B. We kind
Mhm.
of call it like a sea to ship, or farm to ship type of concept, sort of like
Mhm.
that farm to table
Yes.
idea. And especially too, that in turn helps support our local suppliers. It helps support the local farmers, and, helps to support the economy of the places that we're visiting as well. We also don't have any industrially processed foods on board either. A lot of what is made is from scratch on board. So it's also, a great culinary experience for our guests to be able to experience the fresh local cuisine of where it is that we're traveling in the world.
And I mean, the flavors are so much better. Why open a can when you can just, mix some ingredients together? It's great.
Exactly. And kind of like the river cruise concept, especially along our Norwegian Coastal Express ships, you can find the chef in, the local town or community picking up, some breads and cheeses and fresh things like that. So there's a lot of like-mindedness with river cruising as well, in terms of, how we're sourcing our food and really, exploring those local options for our guests to be able to enjoy within the experience. And of course, a lot of that is making sure there are no endangered species or unsustainably listed foods that are showing up on our menus. It sounds like such a simple concept, but it's incredible to know how much of that does currently exist in our world. And we have a goal that we are currently working to reduce up to 30% of our food waste. And this is where one of those concepts of something small can have a big impact. I like to use our Coastal Express route as an example of this, because we have so many ships coming and going all the time, and we could be in certain ports later into the evening. So it could give guests an opportunity maybe to go ashore and have a meal, in the local, bar or restaurant instead of on our ship. So we actually ask our guests that if you're going to be enjoying your meal ashore on this day, can you please let us know, let our restaurant manager know that you're going to be doing this, because then we won't make your portion of food that evening for dinner. So imagine, say of a ship with 500 people along the coast, imagine just 100 of those people went ashore that evening for dinner, and imagine making those 100 meals and they are just going to sit there and go to waste. But then multiply that by the number of ships we have. And if you're doing this daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, the larger impact it can have by not making this food that is not going to get eaten. So again, it's like one of those, sounds like such a simple thing. But oh my gosh, what an impact it can have when you're doing it in a grand scale across an entire fleet on a daily basis. And one of the other things we do with sort of trying to manage food waste on board is how we offer our buffet options. We are very good at offering kind of smaller individualized portions throughout many different parts of our buffet. Because I think too, for us, when we travel, our stomachs seem to expand and our eyes open a lot wider when we see, oh my gosh, look at all this fantastic food that we could be eating, and we maybe potentially tend to overindulge, eyes bigger than our belly kind of concept, right? At
the beginning of the cruise, and then it's reversed,
right? So by offering a lot of these more smaller individualized portions in a buffet setting, again, surprisingly, it seems like a small thing, but it actually stops kind of that hoarding concept of taking more than you're actually going to eat. So there is a lot of, these small, unique ways that really over time can make a big impact. And, it sounds simple, but it all adds up at the end of the day to make an impact.
Well, I mean, even think about your family dinners, and you have somebody who cancels at the last minute, and you're like, okay, all right, they're not coming. And then at the end, you're like, look at all these leftovers. And you're like, well, of course, 3 people are missing. And that's just 3 versus your hundreds, like you said. So
exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. So I love that concept. I think it
Yeah.
just, in the grand scheme of things, just makes so much sense to
Hmm.
approach things that way.
Hmm.
So a couple of the ways that our guests can get on board with, having a more sustainable approach to how they travel is through participation in our Green Stay program.
Hmm.
And so think about, again, your day-to-day lives. How often are you actually changing your towels and the sheets on your bed?
Right.
And you don't need to answer that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, I know I'm not doing it daily.
Mhm.
Sometimes for sheets, it may not do it weekly. Um, but so then why do we have this expectation when we travel that that should be
Mhm.
the case, right? So with our Green Stay program, our guests can choose to opt out of having their room serviced, whether it's
Mhm.
for, a night, 2 nights, however long they wish to do it. They just hang this little "We Stay Green" tag on the outside of their door,
Okay.
so that our cleaning staff will know, okay, we don't need to change out any of their sheets or towels or anything like that on
Mhm.
this particular day.
And especially
So
when you think about towels, because you get out of the shower and you dry yourself. How is that towel dirty?
right.
You're clean. Your body is clean, like
And it's funny
literally.
because actually the
So, yeah.
towels in our bathrooms dry really quickly because we have heated floors in all of them,
Okay.
which is a nice little kind of added
Hmm.
touch. So I mean, I'm right there with you, Kathleen.
Yeah.
I totally agree.
Hmm.
So because our guests are choosing to do this, it of course has an impact for us on saving, laundry detergents, saving water, saving electricity. And so we use each of these room nights as sort of a tally, and we actually make a donation on behalf of that guest to our own Hurtigruten Foundation.
Okay.
And I'll talk a little bit more about what's
Hmm.
involved with our
Sure.
foundation a little later on. So it's, they're doing good, for themselves, for the planet, and in turn they're having an impact because then the foundation will go on and make a bigger impact as well.
Hmm.
And again, that simple concept, but overall can have a great impact. So I have some statistics actually from March of this year that
Okay.
I was able to get from all of our ships,
Hmm.
coastal and expedition combined. And so we had over 10,000 green stay nights
Hmm.
where our guests chose to not have their room serviced with us.
Wow.
So overall, we were able to make a donation to the Hurtigruten Foundation of just over 52,000 Norwegian
Goodness.
kroner. So
Wow.
it's nice to see, it's not
Hmm.
just something we say, it is something that gets put into practice, and we have
Hmm.
the results to prove the impact that we're making on a month-to-month basis as well.
Wonderful.
Now, another way that our guests can help, experience and enjoy a sustainable travel is through our citizen science program.
Mhm.
And for citizen science, we are partnered with many different associations and organizations around the world as sort of a way to help them collect data
Mhm.
to help further their own research. Because some of these associations, they might not have the funding to charter their own ship to spend an entire summer down in Antarctica, studying the mating and breeding patterns of whales. But
Mhm.
we have 3 ships down in Antarctica full time for the Antarctic season. So they can actually piggyback off of us, and we work together with our guests and our expedition team to help them document the different sightings of whales, the different types, where we're seeing them in and around the peninsula. And this then we report back to the associations that we're working with. So it helps them further, what they can't get on their own. We are helping to aid in that. And it doesn't, just stop with whales. I mean, we do this even outside of a wildlife capacity. We actually just were working with a scientist who she's studying the snow algae down in Antarctica. And we can actually take pictures of where at different landing sites we are seeing snow algae, the time and the date of when we saw it. And she can then check the cloud cover to see, does she have a satellite photo that she can marry up to it and actually document kind of the patterns and the timeline of how the snow algae down in Antarctica grows and expands.
And I've never even heard of snow algae. Isn't
Right,
it
it's something, and this is the type of stuff that our guests really get a full educational experience about when they are traveling on a Hurtigruten ship. You know, we really are education over entertainment. Not to say that none of this is entertaining, but I know you understand what I mean in terms of, you know, our focus is more the science center on board, which is unique to Hurtigruten, and we do a lecture series throughout with our expedition teams. But even just this partnership with the citizen science programs around the world, it gives our guests this kind of new sense of, hey, I actually contributed, you know, to that. And again, just a great way to help this research continue to be able to be done and to be sustainably operated for them, so they can continue. You know, and just the use of, hey, because our ships are there, let's partner on this and
amazing.
and help.
And like we were saying before we even started the recording, is that, you know, we both love learning and we love taking courses and doing all that. So to integrate that into the cruise ship experience is just, that would be right up my alley.
I totally agree. I mean, it's like, oh my gosh, to marry these two experiences, I think this is just why I gravitate so much to the Hurtigruten experience.
Wow.
And of course, wherever we do travel, you know, we want to make sure that we are doing everything we possibly can to leave a minimal impact. So for example, in Galapagos, we are 100% carbon neutral in our operations there. And a certification that we have in Alaska, as an example, they have a sustainable certification program called Adventure Green Alaska. And there is a measurement with different operators like ourselves, that if you have met a certain social, economic, and environmental sustainable travel, you know, I guess kind of progress, then you earn this certification as being Adventure Green Alaska. And we're actually very proud. We're the only major cruise line to have this certification in Alaska.
Congratulations. Wow.
So for anybody, you know, considering kind of a greener footprint type of experience in Alaska, you know, Hurtigruten would be a perfect spot or way to enjoy this amazing place. And now just going back to that beach cleans experience, it is something that is worked into, you know, I guess you could call it the excursion roster, because this is something that, you know, wherever possible, we will actually work it in as part of the itinerary of where we are. And as well, just when we are out exploring, if we're not doing it as a formal, you know, beach clean activity, it is very much encouraged by our expedition team in the pre-briefing sessions that we have on board before going ashore. You know, guys, if you are out there and notice something on, you know, the beach or something when you're walking through maybe some of the more treed areas, if there's plastic bottles, if there's netting, anything, please pick it up. We will collect it all kind of right in front of where our Zodiacs land. And at the end of the day, we'll load all of that onto the Zodiacs, bring it back onto the ship all together, and then we can dispose of it properly at the end of the expedition. So it's just, you know, kind of expressing that mindset of, even if we're not formally going out to do it as its own kind of set activity, be cognizant of what's around you, and let's collect anything, you know, that could be harmful to bird life or any of the animal life that live ashore as well. And a lot of, you know, what comes into visiting places around the world is that respect for, nature and wildlife. You know, Mother Nature has created this beautiful planet for us, and the last thing we want to be doing is contributing, you know, more so to the detriment of, you know,
Yes.
especially some of the unique species that exist all around the
Mhm.
world. You know, we might have seen in places like Thailand where there is elephant riding or swimming with dolphins.
Mhm.
You know, those are the types of things that those animals were not brought into the world for that purpose. And
Mhm.
so we make sure when we are in the destinations where there is any type of you know, encounter potentially with wildlife, that we are maintaining a safe distance. We are not you know, trying to alter or change their behavior because we
Mhm.
are there. We are guests in their home and not the other
Right.
way around. And we don't want to alter, you know, their nesting situations or their breeding
Mhm.
patterns or anything like that. So part of what happens with the expedition team on board is with any destination that we're in, especially certain places like Antarctica and the Arctic, where we do follow rules from IATO and IECO,
Mhm.
is to make sure that that knowledge gets shared to our guests on board as well, so
Mhm.
that they are well aware of, you know, what needs to happen before we ever go ashore. So it is almost like setting the expectation. Here's what needs to happen, because we absolutely will not be, you know, the company that is having a negative impact on these places. So this
Mhm.
is kind of a perfect example. I love using this
Yes.
photo because the rule down in Antarctica, especially with the penguins, is no closer than 5 meters or 15 feet. So this
Mhm.
is what, you know, kind of a nature viewing or wildlife viewing situation could look like.
Yeah.
You know, we are there to see them, but we are nicely separated so that we are
Mhm.
not having, you know, any impact on their
Right.
kind of day-to-day habits.
Yes. And
Um,
because you're not endangering them, I think that they can pick up on that. And I bet you they come closer to you than you're supposed to go to them because
Well,
they
and
just
that's
walk
the
right up,
thing.
right?
I mean, the
Yeah.
penguins don't know the 15 feet
Mhm.
rule.
They don't obey. I
So,
don't know what's wrong with them.
you know, they do sometimes tend to approach humans
Yeah.
closer than we would sometimes like, because they're not scared of us.
Mhm.
And in that type of situation, is if it is unavoidable, you know, it's up to us as the human part of that interaction to let the penguin, you know, kind of do its thing. It might kind of nip at your, you know, your pant leg or something, or just kind of stare up
Fabulous.
at you and
Yeah.
be very curious. So it's just up to us. We don't want to scare it. We don't want to
Mhm.
chase it away. We don't want to, obviously, you never reach down and pet it
Right.
or anything
No,
like
but you
that.
just take a picture and smile, and there's your memory. Yeah.
Well, exactly. And even being cognizant of making sure you're not using flashes or things like that with
Mhm.
your camera, because you don't want to harm them in any
Oh,
way.
right.
So you kind of leave the penguin in control of the situation. It'll
Mhm.
do its thing,
Yeah.
and it will eventually get bored of you and wander off and disappear. But
Mhm.
it's just, you know, maintaining that respect for being in some of the regions
Yeah.
that we do get the opportunity to go to.
Mhm.
And a very kind of, I would say, internal concept that we have with when we are visiting some of the communities around the world is the idea of, we arrive as guests, but we hope that we leave as friends, because we do want to foster, you know, some great mutual relationships with the
Mhm.
places that we visit, to allow and be welcomed back in future, you know, with future generations.
Yes.
So it does mean that if we are in some of the, you know, communities that have their own tour guides and their own excursion
Mhm.
experiences, it means not setting up our own international tours and putting them in a destination. It means buying those tours and buying those guides locally and making sure that the funds go to the community
Mhm.
that we are visiting, or even in some of the smaller towns where there may not be, you know, any major type of tours you can do, but they might have maybe a cultural museum or an art gallery.
Mhm.
So for us, we could buy all of the entrance tickets for our guests in advance,
Mhm.
so that they can then go enjoy that locally within the community, and the funds go to support the local museums, the local
Right.
galleries that our guests are
Which
visiting.
is
You
what you
know,
want. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, there is a lot of, international tourism companies out there that put their own staff and vehicles and experience in the destination.
Mhm.
We want to do the opposite. We want to, be experiencing and purchasing these things from the locals, from the local guides, from the
Right.
local
Yeah.
tour operators to make sure that the funding is going
Mhm.
back.
And as
And
an
it,
example of that, it's kind of funny because I was, we stopped in one of the Caribbean islands and we're wandering around town and I'm like, why is there a McDonald's or a Wendy's here? Like, no, I could get that at home. I want to have local food and local tastes and not this
exactly.
mass produced stuff. So sort of the same idea of, keeping it definitely within the local community and supporting them.
Exactly.
Mhm.
I had a very similar experience actually in one of the more major, somewhat commercialized
Yeah.
Caribbean ports. But what we
Mhm.
actually did was do a food tour where we did visit a lot of the local, kind of mom and
Lovely.
pop
Yeah.
restaurants that
Mhm.
probably in a day, we're not sort of on the main tourist,
Yeah.
kind of
Mhm.
roadways and alleyways and things. And oh my gosh, like just, what a different perspective it gave us
Yes.
to be able to enjoy, the local cuisine that,
Lovely. Yeah.
they make. It was such a great experience.
Mhm.
And part of it too is just having that mutual respect and understanding and wanting to celebrate and learn about their way of life, especially
Yeah.
when we are in places like the high,
Mhm.
Arctic communities, say in our own
Mhm.
backyard in Canada.
Yeah.
And it can also be, I understand that, we may think, oh, because it says in our itinerary we're going to be there, that we have to be there.
Right.
And that's not necessarily the case. I mean, we could come up to one of these communities and our expedition team will speak with the elders before we send any of our guests ashore,
Mhm.
to say, is it still okay that we come ashore today?
Right.
Because you never know, especially in a small community environment. What
Mhm.
if they were maybe going through a death or a tragedy
Yeah.
in the community and
Mhm.
they are grieving? The last thing they want to be doing is entertaining, people coming off of a ship and,
Right.
when their heart is just not in it because as a
Mhm.
community they are going through something. So we are very respectful and aware of making sure that that is the type of relationship we earn with where we
Mhm.
visit,
Mhm.
so that we will be welcomed back in future. And I think we are starting to see, with some of the, larger cities even around the world, they are shying away from having, ships dock right in their city centers and
Yes.
things like that, because
Mhm.
they are seeing and experiencing some of the negative impact of that. So
Right.
they're not
Mhm.
wanting to discourage tourism, but trying to maintain, what exists, to
Mhm.
ensure that there is still something to see and
Yes.
enjoy,
Yeah.
for future
Great.
generations as
Yeah. To
well.
respect the communities you're visiting. Absolutely. Yes.
Exactly,
Mhm.
exactly. So as we talked about Hurtigruten Foundation, so this is
Mhm.
something that we have a great, obviously, love and passion for the places and things that we visit, and we want to make sure that we can even do more, outside of what our day-to-day ships are doing with when we visit. So this supports global and local initiatives for things like, preserving, nature areas and protecting endangered wildlife and supporting communities that we are visiting throughout the world. It's something, we have a lot of say in as well, and we have an opportunity in May and November of each year to help encourage people to submit, grant
Mhm.
applications, especially when it comes to sustainable travel initiatives or just sustainable anything in the world. We love those kind of keen startup ideas to apply for funding with Hurtigruten Foundation, because these are
Lovely.
the types of, maybe startup organizations or associations that we want to partner with, that at the end of the day, we all have the common, mindset of wanting to do good for our world.
Yes.
Um, so I want to share a personal story because this one warms my heart to no end. And this is just kind of a nice example of, what a difference we can have in somebody's, life. So this is a school that we supported in Puerto Eden. The last time we were able to see them was at the end of 2019. Obviously, we've had a big gap in travel since then. So Puerto Eden, tiny little island, just off of the mainland of Chile. You can only get to it by sea. So of course they do, suffer from the ease of having supplies and things come to their island. And this is a place that we used to, frequently visit, especially doing some of our Patagonian expedition cruising, and Puerto Eden used to be a stop we frequented. So our most recent visit with them in November of 2019, we went to the local school, and it's just a tiny little school. There's 15 kids that are there, and they had 3 very old, barely working computers. Like, if I could compare it in terms of what we know old computers as, like the DOS version of old computers, this is the type of thing that they have, which you just can't do anything with.
I remember trying to program DOS, it doesn't work.
Yes, exactly. And they are rationing things like pencils and paper and just school supplies. They had very little for their kids. And obviously seeing something like that really has an impact on you, because we day to day, aren't struggling with a lot of those, kind of types of experiences. So that day, we had actually Roald Amundsen in just off on anchor. So we actually brought the kids and the teachers into the Zodiac, and we brought them on board our ship for the day. And I think one of the most touching things was seeing them explore our ship. They drove the elevators. They loved driving the elevators. They sat and sang songs with our pianist up in the Explorers Lounge. And then they all took the time, to make a drawing for our captain and for the ship. So they themselves, have so little, but wanted to take the time out to give us something. And oh my gosh, does that ever, just pull at your heartstrings?
Yes.
So we knew right then and there we needed to do something for this school in Puerto Eden. And we knew that our other smaller sister ship, MS From, was going to be paying a visit to them just a few weeks later. So we actually asked, the guests in advance that would be joining that expedition if they could bring school supplies and things like that down, so that when From was in port, we could deliver those to the ship, and then deliver those to the school. And then we took it that one step further and decided, what, we need to give them proper funding to make sure that they have this as a sustainable, way for them to succeed with schooling in future. Exactly. Continue to go, because a one-time thing is one thing, it helps right then and there, but we need to have a longer term plan for them. So we actually donated their own science center. So we, they loved our science center so much on board. We gave them all of their own microscopes for the school. We donated them brand new computers, back to where technology is today. And endless supply of, papers and markers and pencils and crayons and erasers and everything like that.
Stuff we take for granted.
And that's exactly it. In a day-to-day, we definitely don't think of how easy those things are for us to attain. And these are what may seem like such simple items, but have a life impact. What we ended up doing, we called it kind of our Christmas present for kind of the December 2019 Christmas, was this great big donation of supplies, so that the school could continue working forward for a longer term, future enjoyment with students. And so there's so much of that, that we see and experience, whether it's schools and communities or certain wildlife or certain, nature areas that are being affected by, potentially human impact. And that's really what lies at the heart of the Hurtigruten Foundation, is how can we continue to, support as much as possible a lot of the world that we are visiting with our guests.
Yes, amazing.
So
Wow, that
I
is
do.
such a heartfelt thing. Oh,
I
wow.
know it really is. And I think it to see it firsthand, I mean, to see it for ourselves, there's something in that I think really does, resonate with a lot of people. And I think why people are pursuing more of that, agent of change type of experience when they travel with a bit more purpose and meaning.
Yeah.
So I did just want to finish off. I've got a great video that I think just kind of nicely kind of captures the spirit of what Hurtigruten is about, and how we like to tie in sustainability with how we move forward as a company.
Sure.
So
Yeah, that would be great.
I hope everyone enjoys it.
Yes, thank you.
All the choices you take in your life will have some sort of impact, in one way or another. Throughout our more than 125 years of operation, we have witnessed the impact of climate change on vulnerable areas. Coming from Norway, a part of the world blessed extensively with pristine nature, pure water and clean air, we value what we have and want to keep it that way. This is why we made some fundamental decisions on how we operate years ago. We are here to raise spirits for good. For whom, you might ask? Our answer will be for you. For the people living in the small communities we visit. For wildlife, nature, and the environment. Yes, we are talking about sustainability, and we take this seriously. We want our expedition cruises to create change agents for sustainability, and we use traveling and knowledge sharing as our tools to make that happen. This is why we have adopted the UN Sustainable Development Goals as our guide to offer you sustainable expedition cruises. Our long heritage of exploration, both as a nation and as a company, creates a living legacy for today's expeditions. Through the history of mankind, going on an expedition has always been about broadening and expanding horizons. We believe that that is true for today as well. Our goal is to boost and then satisfy any curiosity and knowledge you have about the destination you visit, be it its nature, wildlife, climate changes, history, or culture. We will give you authentic experiences of a destination, and to do so, we have expedition teams on board all our ships. These are experts, authors, researchers and adventurers, handpicked for your expedition based on the destination and their specific skills. They invite you to participate in in-depth lectures and interesting activities to gain a greater knowledge of the regions you explore. And they do so with enthusiasm and passion. We think that witnessing the beauty of our planet is sure to leave a lasting impression on you. And you'll talk enthusiastically about these stunning destinations with friends and family for decades to come. To make sure you can speak informatively when you return home, every one of our cruises has a focus on the environment. It is our hope that engaging with nature on our expedition cruise will inspire you to do all you can to cherish and protect the precious world we all share. In short, when you choose to go on an expedition cruise with us, you are setting a new, more sustainable standard for expedition travel.
And that is it.
My goodness, that was amazing. Wow, that was so nice to see that all put together. And yeah, my goodness, yep. There's no
But
words.
Kathleen,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you for embracing this conversation with me, because I know, there's so many great destinations in the world to talk about and experiences, but I think sustainable travel is, definitely at the top of some people's minds, and how
Yeah.
can they explore, different alternatives for how
Mhm.
to travel. So I really appreciate the time, to be able to share some of the insights for how we approach sustainable tourism.
Yeah. And thank you. And thank you for putting all that together. I know myself personally, when I think of, I hear all these people saying, oh, well, I offset the carbons or whatever. And it's just like throwing money at different things or planting
Yeah.
trees. But to see a company making a change is such a big difference. Just to see that, the carbon zero and just the little things about the plastic wrapping and to do that. And then the dining, like all these little things is just a huge impact. And I loved it. Thank you for putting all that together.
My pleasure. And I agree completely. The small things in in multiple ways can have a grand impact. And so that it's great to get the chance to chat with you about all of this. So thank you again so much, Kathleen. It's always a pleasure. And we'll have to put the thinking caps on for where we go with this in our next session.
Absolutely. Yes, definitely. Definitely. Well, thank you everybody for watching. And I hope you all have a great week and be more sustainable, because I really learned so much. So thank you. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much for watching this week's cruise chat with Kristin from Hurtigruten. It is just phenomenal to see all of the things that they're doing to make where they're going more sustainable and to keep it green, I guess is the right word. I'm not totally sure, but just to keep it environmentally friendly and to do everything that they can do to make sure that they are leaving a place better than when they came, which is kind of, a misnomer. A lot of people are like, well, you can't make it better than when you came. You can only make it the same. But by cleaning the beaches, by erasing their footprints, by leaving supplies for school children, they're making it so much better. And it's just phenomenal. It's amazing. Next week, I'm going to be meeting with Cork, and we're going to be going over some of their expedition itineraries as well. They have a brand new ship that just launched, and I have a feeling that they're going to be talking about that, but we'll see. I haven't coordinated with her yet, so we'll see. But again, thank you so much for watching, everybody. Please reach out to me if you would like to book your own cruise with any of the ones that we have on our channel, or a favorite cruise line of your own as well. And I hope that you subscribed. If not, please do it now, and we will see you all next week. Goodbye, everybody.